What if a woman's deepest fulfillment has nothing to do with marriage? For centuries, society insisted that a woman's worth was tied to being a wife, but Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, saw something far more profound in the unmarried woman. Was he right? Or does modern life reveal a different truth? For generations, marriage was considered the ultimate purpose of a woman's life, a social contract, a measure of success, even a spiritual duty. But today, more women than ever are choosing a different path, one without a wedding ring. What does this mean for their identity, their psychology, and their sense of wholeness? Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, had complex views on marriage. He believed it was a crucial mirror for the soul, a way to confront our deepest fears and desires through partnership. Yet he also recognized that some women and men were destined for a different kind of journey, one of radical self-discovery beyond traditional roles. So what's the truth? Can a woman truly thrive without marriage, or does she risk losing a vital part of herself? Jung's theories on the anima and animus, on individuation, and on the archetypes of the feminine hold surprising answers. Let's explore them. Carl Jung saw marriage not just as a social institution, but as a profound psychological and spiritual encounter, one that forces individuals to confront their own unconscious shadows. In his view, the marital bond was a crucible for growth, where partners mirror each other's hidden aspects, triggering both conflict and transformation. He believed that through this intimate confrontation, men and women could integrate their repressed qualities, what he called the anima, the inner feminine in men, and the animus, the inner masculine in women. For Jung, a successful marriage wasn't merely about companionship, it was a path toward wholeness, where love became the alchemical fire that refined the self. Yet Jung's perspective raises a provocative question. If marriage is such a vital tool for psychological integration, what happens to those who never marry? He acknowledged that some individuals, particularly women, might follow a different trajectory, one where the call to self-realization supersedes societal expectations. The unmarried woman, in Jung's framework, isn't necessarily incomplete, but her journey demands a different kind of rigor. Without the mirror of a partner, she must confront her animus, the inner masculine, directly, often through career, creativity, or intellectual pursuits. The danger, Jung warned, was that without conscious work, the animus could remain unconscious, manifesting as rigid opinions, unexamined ambitions, or even a subtle hostility toward relationships. But if she engaged with it deliberately, her path could lead to an equally profound form of individuation, one where she became her own vessel of transformation. This leaves us with a paradox. Jung revered marriage as a sacred mechanism for growth, yet he also recognized that some souls are meant to walk alone. So was he contradicting himself? Or was he hinting at a deeper truth, that wholeness isn't about the institution itself, but about the courage to face what it represents, the unclaimed parts of ourselves, with or without a ring? In Jungian psychology, the unmarried woman who consciously chooses her path embodies a powerful archetype, the wise woman or solitary feminine. This figure is not defined by lack, but by an inward richness, a self-contained wholeness that transcends traditional roles. Unlike the societal caricature of the spinster, a woman stunted by fear or bitterness, the wise woman archetype represents a mature femininity that has turned inward, cultivating depth, wisdom, and creative force. Jung saw this as a valid, even sacred, path of individuation, one where a woman's relationship to herself becomes the primary alchemical vessel for transformation. A critical distinction lies in the motivation behind singleness. Jung warned of the unconscious pitfalls, a woman who avoids marriage out of fear, trauma, or unresolved animus possession, where her inner masculine dominates in unhealthy ways, risks stagnation. Her singleness may then become a defense mechanism, a way to avoid the vulnerability and self-confrontation that relationships demand. But when solitude is a conscious choice, a deliberate engagement with self-knowledge, it becomes a sacred space. The The wise woman archetype emerges when a woman no longer rejects marriage out of rebellion or fear, but because she has found a more demanding calling, the full realization of her own psyche. Jung's concept of self-realization beyond societal roles is radical even today. He believed that true individuation requires breaking free from collective expectations, not out of defiance, but from a deeper obedience to the self, the central archetype of wholeness. For some women, this means that marriage would be a detour, even a betrayal of their unique destiny. Instead, their union happens inwardly as they reconcile masculine and feminine energies within themselves. The artist who pours her passion into creation, the mystic who seeks divine communion, the scholar who dedicates herself to the life of the mind, these are all expressions of the solitary feminine in its fullness. History offers luminous examples of women who embodied this archetype. The medieval mystic Hildegard von Bingen, unmarried and cloistered, channeled her visions into theology, music, and medicine, becoming a conduit of divine wisdom. The writer Emily Dickinson, who chose seclusion, turned her solitude into poetry that plumbed the depths of the soul. The philosopher Simone Weil rejected conventional life to pursue a relentless quest for truth and justice. These women were not failed wives, but pioneers of consciousness, demonstrating that the unmarried path, when walked with awareness, can be a fierce and fertile ground for individuation. Jung's framework suggests that the unmarried woman's journey is not an absence, but a different kind of completion, one where the inner marriage of opposites replaces the external one. The question then shifts, not why isn't she married, but what is her soul married to? The answer, in the deepest sense, is the unfolding of her own destiny. For the unmarried woman seeking psychological and spiritual wholeness, Jungian psychology offers a profound alternative path to individuation, one where the inner world becomes the primary relationship to cultivate. Without a partner acting as the traditional mirror for unconscious projections, she must develop an exceptional degree of self-awareness and engage in what Jung called the transcendent function, the process of reconciling opposites within herself. This often manifests through deep creative work, where art, writing, or other forms of expression become the container for her unlived potentials. A painter might discover her repressed masculine energy, animus, through bold, decisive strokes on canvas. A scientist might find her intuitive feminine side, anima, in moments of breakthrough inspiration. The key is that her creative acts become sacred dialogues with the self, forging wholeness from within rather than seeking completion through another. Spirituality often plays a crucial role in this journey, providing what Jung described as a numinous experience, a connection to something greater that fills the archetypal space typically occupied by romantic union in the collective unconscious. Many unmarried women throughout history have turned to meditation, mystical practices, or nature-based spirituality as ways to experience sacred marriage within their own souls. The 12th century abbess Hildegard of Bingen, though celibate, spoke of being wedded to the divine in her visions, while modern women might find similar fulfillment through psychological introspection or service to a higher cause. This spiritual path allows the unmarried woman to transform what could become loneliness into fertile solitude, a state Jung valued as essential for encountering the depths of the psyche. Yet this path carries specific shadows that must be consciously addressed. Loneliness may surface not as mere absence of company, but as what Jungians call the hunger of the soul, a yearning for the mysterious other that normally gets projected onto a partner. Without awareness, this can manifest as workaholism, spiritual bypassing, or compulsive creativity that masks avoidance of true self-confrontation. Societal pressure compounds this challenge, as the unmarried woman often bears what Marie-Louise von Franz, Jung's close collaborator, termed the collective shadow of the feminine, carrying unconscious anxieties about women who exist outside traditional roles. Even well-meaning questions, "Why aren't you married?" can become psychological burdens, forcing her to constantly justify her existence. The most treacherous shadow, however, lies in unresolved animus development, Jung's concept of the inner masculine. An unmarried woman risks either identifying too strongly with her animus, becoming harsh, overly intellectual, or domineering, or failing to develop it at all, remaining in passive, eternal daughter mode. Jung warned that an unconscious animus might possess a woman, speaking through her as rigid opinions, unbending principles, or destructive criticism of others' relationships. The remedy is conscious engagement, through dream work, active imagination, or carefully chosen male mentors/colleagues who help her relate to masculine energy without either fusing with it or rejecting it. Jung's crucial distinction between repression and conscious choice becomes vital here. He observed that many unmarried women of his time were accidental spinsters, products of circumstance who unconsciously longed for marriage while outwardly denying it. This created what he called a negative animus possession, where their unacknowledged desires turned into bitterness or superiority complexes. By contrast, the woman who consciously chooses her path, who looks directly at her desire for partnership and still elects solitude, achieves what Jung considered the highest goal, freedom from compulsive patterns. Her celibacy or singleness then becomes not a limitation, but what the alchemists called the vas hermeticum, the sealed vessel in which transformation occurs. The modern unmarried woman has opportunities Jung could scarcely imagine for turning this theoretical path into lived reality. Depth psychology itself provides tools for self-analysis that substitute for the mirroring function of marriage. Women's economic independence allows survival without marital bargaining, and digital communities offer connection without conventional social structures. Yet the fundamental challenge remains unchanged: to build an inner marriage where the ego consciously relates to all aspects of the self, anima and animus, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, until the need for outer validation transforms into the capacity for genuine inner union. In this sense, the unmarried woman's journey may represent not an alternative to marriage, but its most radical redefinition. The 21st century has witnessed a seismic shift in women's lives, one that Jung, writing in the mid-1900s, could only glimpse in its infancy. Today, more women than ever before are actively choosing independence, not as a temporary state but as a deliberate life path. Economic autonomy, reproductive freedom, and the erosion of traditional gender roles have created possibilities Jung's female contemporaries could scarcely imagine. Yet this liberation comes with its own psychological complexities. Where Jung saw marriage as a primary vessel for individuation, modern women are proving that wholeness can emerge from many sources: careers that demand full engagement, creative pursuits that become lifelong passions, or spiritual journeys that require undivided attention. The question is no longer whether a woman can live unmarried, but what inner work is required to ensure this path leads to genuine fulfillment rather than mere rebellion against tradition. Does Jung's theory still hold up in this new landscape? The answer lies in distinguishing his core insights from their cultural packaging. Jung's emphasis on confronting projections, seeing our unconscious selves reflected in others, remains profoundly relevant, but the other need not be a romantic partner. A female entrepreneur might encounter her shadow in business rivals. An artist could project her animus onto a mentor or intellectual muse. What Jung called the transcendent function, the reconciliation of opposites, can occur through any deep engagement with the world that forces us beyond our ego's limits. Modern depth psychologists have expanded Jung's framework, noting that for some, the alchemical marriage happens not with a human partner but with a calling, a community, or the earth itself. The key is whether the unmarried woman uses her independence as an excuse to avoid psychological work or as the very space required to do it more intensely. Alternative paths to wholeness are flourishing in this new paradigm. Careers are no longer just jobs but arenas for self-discovery. A woman might find her animus expressed not through a husband but through leadership, while her anima emerges in workplace collaboration or mentorship. Artistic creation has become a legitimate spiritual practice, with many unmarried women describing their creative process as a daily dialogue with the unconscious. Community, too, offers what marriage once monopolized: Witness the rise of intentional living arrangements where unmarried women create chosen families that provide intimacy without conventional structure. And perhaps most radically, self-love, a concept Jung barely addressed, has emerged as a legitimate path to integration, with tools like mindfulness and therapy helping women become both the lover and the beloved in their own psyches. Yet this new freedom carries its own dangers, chief among them the risk of romanticizing either marriage or singleness as superior states. Just as traditional culture pathologized unmarried women, some modern discourse flips the script, portraying marriage as a surrender or singleness as enlightened. Jung would caution against such one-sidedness. The goal is never an ideology but individuation, the unique expression of one's whole self. A woman who marries reflexively to avoid societal judgment remains as unconscious as one who rejects marriage simply to prove her independence. The true test is whether her choice, whatever its form, leads to greater self-awareness and engagement with life's depths. Ultimately, Jung's enduring contribution may be his insistence that no outer form, married or unmarried, can replace the inner work. The modern unmarried woman stands at a historic crossroads. She has unprecedented freedom to design her life, but with that freedom comes the responsibility to choose consciously. Whether through love, work, art, or solitude, the challenge remains what it was in Jung's day, not just to live, but to become. In this light, marriage is neither necessity nor obstacle. It is simply one of many possible crucibles for the soul's transformation. The deeper truth is that fulfillment comes not from any particular relationship status, but from the courage to meet whatever path we choose with full presence, using its joys and sufferings alike as grist for the mill of self-realization. Carl Jung's wisdom endures not because he provided definitive answers, but because he framed the right questions, questions that resonate even more powerfully today. His view of marriage as a psychological mirror remains valuable, but modern women have expanded the reflection pool to include careers, creativity, and community. Where Jung saw the conjugal bond as a primary path to wholeness, contemporary lived experience reveals multiple roads to individuation. This doesn't invalidate his insights, but rather extends them, showing that the fundamental principle isn't marital status, but the quality of attention we bring to our chosen path. The unmarried woman isn't an exception to Jung's theories. She's proof that individuation can't be confined to any single life script. The real truth lies beyond the marriage debate entirely. Whether partnered or solitary, the transformative work happens in that sacred space where we stop asking, "Am I normal?" and start asking, "Am I awake?" A married woman can remain unconscious in her relationship just as an unmarried one can achieve remarkable self-knowledge, and vice versa. What matters is the courage to face our own depths, to integrate our shadows, and to honor what Jung called the self, that mysterious, whole version of us that exists beyond roles and social expectations. So what do you think? Can a woman truly be complete without marriage? Has Jung's vision stood the test of time, or does modern psychology need new models? Share your thoughts below. Have you witnessed examples of profound wholeness in unmarried women? Do you believe society has fully made peace with this path? Let's continue this vital conversation in the comments. And if this exploration resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into psychology, meaning, and the art of living consciously.